everyone, to the Be Freaking Awesome podcast. I am one of your hosts, Sammy Kinnison, here with Angela Belford. Today, we are joined by longtime friend and colleague of Angela, Maureen. And Angela, why don't you kick off the introduction a little bit, and then Maureen will pass it over to you to kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself. But how do you know Maureen, Angela?
I know Maureen because on the day that I got to the biggest stage of my life, 2015 World Championship of Public Speaking, and I completely was overrun by stage fright. I scurried my little self back to my coach's booth at the Toastmaster convention. Darren LaCroix was my coach. He was so kind to me. And he said, I need to talk to other people, meet my friends, Maureen and Mike Davis, who we've had Mike on the podcast before. But Maureen was one of the people that cushioned my fall when I was horrified that I did not do very well in the World Championship of Public Speaking. I still leverage it. I still talk about it all the time. Every time I'm introduced to Toastmasters, I'm like, I represented you. And nobody puts that in their introductions, but I do. Anyway, so Maureen, we've had her down to Arkansas. She has visited Arkansas as a keynote speaker for us. And I love being Facebook friends and kind of following along. So Maureen, I also love that I actually have a friend that is a literal rocket scientist. So that just makes me happy. So Maureen, tell us a little bit about you, a tiny bit about your background and kind of what you're up to these days.
Oh, Angela, thanks. And I tell you, the reason I'm friends with you is because you are freaking awesome.
Oh, yay! I'll send you $1 in the mail.
Seriously, I remember Darren introducing us. Darren is one of my best friends, and he was my coach when I was in the finals of the World Championship back in 2009. So I was part of his little circle of contacts and friends. And I've met some fabulous people, you being one of them. Mike Davis also is a good friend of mine. So my background. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to challenge you and invite you to you did not do poorly in that contest. Anybody who gets to that stage has completely wowed it. So, own it.
I mean, yes, there was 30,000 people that started, and I ended up in the top 85 in the world that year. So,
and the rest of the 34,000, subtract 85 from that, they were all like, "Oh, I wish I was her." So, you really, that's an extraordinary accomplishment.
Thank you.
Having said that, my background is engineering. I am a former rocket scientist from NASA. I spent almost 14 years doing jet propulsion research. A little different from rocket propulsion, but theoretically, same thing, different propellant. I worked with airplane engines, not necessarily spaceship engines, but we're all under the same NASA umbrella. Loved my work, but every day walked in thinking, ooh, do I belong here? It was, imposter syndrome. And that has parlayed itself into my new current world of professional speaking, where I speak exclusively on overcoming imposter syndrome because I lived it. And I could think back, and I've developed strategies about how I overcame it because I really had a great career at NASA. Even though I felt like I didn't belong there, there was mountains of evidence to say I was successful and qualified and competent, and whack, 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 get over it, girl. So I teach people the strategies to whack, 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 get over it. Now, I don't say whack, whack, whack in my keynote, just to be clear. That's my inside voice saying that.
No, I think that's it, though. I think you walk up on stage and you start slapping people and saying, all right, guys, get over it. That's my keynote. Like, everybody just line up here.
It's tough love. It's tough love. Because I say it with all the love in my heart. It's just tough love,
Yes, and convincing myself to just get over it, that has always worked very well. Just get over it.
Yeah.
Very effective.
So earlier this year, we actually had a podcast episode. Some of you guys listening may remember. It was about imposter syndrome, where, to summarize a 45-minute conversation, we roughly said that imposter syndrome, we're going to label it a superpower, not a syndrome. Maureen, you, I think, have some strong feelings about this type of labeling of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, it's and I don't mean to sound negative about it. I know that imposter syndrome, the word syndrome has a very specific meaning in the medical community, right?
Mhm.
It's not a syndrome. It's not diagnosable. It's not in the whatever that book is of all the mental health issues. I prefer the word. In fact, when it was originally identified, it was called imposter phenomenon, which, as a
Mhm.
scientist, that makes more sense to me. That means that there's series of behaviors, and they all come under the same kind of envelope of similarities. I like the phrase imposter experience, uh, because it's a summation of outside influences and internal reactions. I don't like to say that it's a superpower, because to say it's a superpower implies that it's something that you want. I want I want to be able to have x-ray vision. I want to be able to teleport myself. I want to have me in two places at once. Superpowers, those are cool. Imposter syndrome, I don't want to live with that anxiety, that constant self-doubt, that fear of being found as a fraud, that wondering, second guessing every decision. I don't want to live there. I lived there for a long time. Not fun, not cool, not productive. However, all those experiences under the imposter syndrome envelope are indicative of other great things that are superpowers. Yeah, the symptom is that maybe you over prepare or you procrastinate because you're not sure if you can do something. Uh, Overworking, over preparing, that shows that you are a hard worker, that you pursue excellence, that you can network and gather information. Those are superpowers. But having it defined, imposter syndrome, that fear, I don't want to live there. Does that make
I
sense?
It does
Mhm.
make sense, and we kind of joke that every time we use the word nuance, we have to pay $1 to a nonprofit because you cannot get through an episode of Be Freaking Awesome without saying the word nuance. But I think that's the way it is with a lot of the things that affect us emotionally and mentally, is that there is a ton of nuance to it. And so I think that, and I should have probably re-listened to that episode before we had you on here, but that is, I think, I love the what you're saying, how you're clarifying that, because it is the behaviors that make up what is characterized. I also love the people-centered language, right? So
Mhm.
I tell people, and in my TED Talk said, do not say that someone is a homeless person. They are a person experiencing homelessness. So I love this because you can say it's a person experiencing
Mhm.
imposter feelings.
Oh, that is
Yeah.
such a great analogy, because it's so easy to put a label on ourselves and live to the label. And a lot of the labels we label ourselves with are really destructive or scary, and not productive. Uh, so yeah, I love that analogy. Mhm.
I talk a lot in my new book about the idea that we think emotions are scary, and so we want to get rid of them. And in the same way, this is what's coming up for me with this imposter syndrome idea, is that we go, "Oh, this is scary. I want to get rid of it. It's a fear, it's a fraud. I want to get rid of it. I want to get rid of it." And really, it's just an indicator light.
Yeah.
It's no more tragic than the gas light comes on in your car. Oh, it's time to get gasoline.
Mhm.
If you ignore the gas light in your car, it is very unfortunate circumstances. You
Mhm.
then will end up not having to be able to get to where you need to go. You will have to get a gas tank, all of those things. In the same way, when we ignore these feelings of feeling like a fraud, feeling like we're an imposter, feeling like that, and when we ignore those for a long period of time, they do have some unfortunate consequences.
Yeah.
Stress
Mhm.
being a
Mhm.
big one,
Mhm.
and taking kind of these measures to an extreme, right? So
Yeah.
overworking and giving more than what you're being paid for, or more than what is required of the job. These are all indicators. Oh, wow. My brain just connected. Oh, like in NASA, like you can't ignore all the lights that are going off, right? Like
Oh, so
that's
true.
information. And so cool because I'm imagining like the Apollo 13. I love that movie, by the way, and all of the different sensors that were going off that were just telling them information.
Yeah.
And the same thing, this feelings of imposter are telling us information.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, when you look at psychology, and I'm not a psychologist, but I do know that feelings determine thoughts, thoughts determine actions, actions determine outcomes. So the feelings determine, that's where we can make the change. You get the feeling, you get that alarm, you get that indicator. What thoughts will you have? Will that thought be, oh my gosh, the world is coming to an end? Or will the thought be, why am I feeling like that? Feelings are just, they're neutral. They're not morally right or wrong. They just are. So why do you have that feeling? Where did that feeling come from? What thought can I have? What thought? I challenge people to take that experience, that moment when you're feeling those things, put it on the witness stand, drill down, interrogate it. Where did it come from? Is it mine? Is that thought mine? Is that feeling born out of something that I believed in, or is it did somebody tell me that I should believe in it? Is it from a past experience? Find the evidence to support the validity of it. And if there is no evidence, then you do different. You just do something different. That's where true change happens. If you just like you said, if you just let that feeling go and let it go, we're so automated in so many ways. We are so structured in our automatic, like, you drive to work, you don't even know how you got there, right? It's just automatic. You get up in the morning, you have the same routine. You go, you brush your teeth the same way. So many things go unchecked, including thoughts and emotions. We need to stop that. We need to be disciplined, intentional, and very interrogative about our own emotions and thoughts. That's where change happens.
I love that you're saying that and the example you're using, because right now, those of you that are watching us on YouTube can see that I am in a little bit of a different setup. Normally, I've got my full bookcase, but I'm actually in the studio today recording my book, and I was recording that very portion of the book where I talk about your autonomic nervous system and that just automatic. And the motivational triad, our brain wants to be efficient. It is like, think about when we started to learn how to drive, or if you've had kids and you taught them how to drive, like they're thinking about every little thing and they're jerky and it wasn't natural.
Yeah.
Any new skill that we have doesn't feel natural. So even when you begin to investigate your thoughts and you begin to investigate the sensations in your body, like, woo, what happened there? And you start, that's going to feel awkward. It's no more normal than a teenager getting behind the wheel of a car for the first time. It's awkward. It's going to feel strange. And it's okay, because then the more reps that you get at investigating, noticing what's happening in your body. I also love to point out to people, like, okay, so your stomach is churning. Like, I had somebody in my Toastmaster club that he goes, "Oh, Angela, every time I go to get up to speak, the butterflies just get going in my stomach." And I go, "Is that bad?" "What? Of course it's bad. It feels horrible." I'm like, "Or it's just your stomach is getting ready to, like, to perform."
Yeah.
And so you're right. We assign the, like, moral or the whether it's good or bad. And if you decide you're getting ready to get on a roller coaster, and then you and I are both from Ohio, so we love me some Cedar Point.
Yep.
Anyway, when we get on a roller coaster, we probably feel similar kind of way, except we love it because we chose to feel like this, right?
Yeah.
So I think people think it's gonna come natural to start investigating their thoughts, and it's not.
It's
And that's
not.
okay.
Yeah. It's definitely a disciplined and focused, ongoing commitment.
So for me, just to I'll put myself up as a case study for us to dissect a little bit more. The times when I have felt and experienced imposter experience, my go-to strategy has been fake it till you make it. And I have yet to really figure out, like, is this, it's more of like, I've identified this is my coping mechanism. Coping mechanisms in and of themselves are not actually bad. It helped you survive a thing. And sometimes we can still choose different coping mechanisms. But as far as things go, I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on, like, fake it till you make it kind of mentality to get through it? Like it, don't like it? What are we thinking?
Well, what I have experienced and what I've learned from talking to people, imposter syndrome always screams the loudest in times of change, right?
Mhm.
Because something new is facing you, new job, new career, new day for some people even.
Mhm.
uh, and so it's automatic to think, oh my gosh, I've never done that before. I'm not experienced with that. I don't have the training for that. And that's normal. That's a normal kind of questioning, self-doubt. That's a reasonable level of self-doubt. But what you can rely on is your character qualities. Are you resilient? Are you curious? Are you hardworking? Are you open to learning? And those are the things that will get you over the hump. Now, when you're operating in that, relying on your self-doubt, or I'm sorry, your past character qualities, it's gonna feel like you're faking it, but you're
Mhm.
not. So I challenge people, say, don't say fake it till you make it. Even though the action feels like it, the action doesn't look like it because you are operating in your character qualities. Your skills will catch up.
Mm.
You've developed character qualities over a lifetime. Skills come in increments. They come in discrete segments. You just may not have the skills to get to where you need to go. And you're not faking anything. You're just moving forward on your normal character quality flow. Does that make sense?
It does.
I love that. And so I love mantras, and fake it till you make it is kind of a mantra that's accepted in our society. So the idea of saying, like, woo, gonna need some resilience today, or something like that, reminding yourself of what that character trait that you're going to use. Okay, I am very good at perseverance. Or
Yes,
I
yes,
am
yes.
I say all the time, one of my core 7 beliefs I talk about in my book is I have what it takes and I
Mhm,
trust myself. And
mhm.
so I love reminding myself, "Oh, I have what it takes. I can figure things out." Oh,
Yes.
and I even
Mhm,
remind myself of evidence of other things that I have figured it out. And
mhm.
so I wonder if instead of fake it till you make it is I can figure this out. I can
Yeah,
figure.
and I think a lot of us probably none of us really want to be a fake. Nobody really wants to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. But the fact that we even say it is almost incongruent then with what we want to do. So I agree. Let's just get rid of that whole phrase and work exactly like how you're saying, Angela. Saying these things to yourself. I love that. I can figure it out. Or I know people I can ask for help. Or I don't know exactly how to do it, but I'm smart enough where I think I will figure it out. Or I'm a team player. I'm in for the long haul. All those things are so much more powerful than saying, "Well, I'm going to fake it till I make it," because that just
Right.
sounds so disingenuous.
Well, and I have a very deep belief in my own willingness to work hard and my own ability to just keep going. And
Mm.
so I'm like, the first time I do something, I may have to work hard. Okay, that's cool. I'm willing to work hard. I'm willing to keep trying until I figure it out. The other thing is that, oh golly, I just lost it. Never mind.
Well, let me pick up on that point that you just made. I'm willing to work hard because one of the symptoms or one of the coping strategies or coping mechanisms of people with imposter syndrome, or I guess maybe it's better to say it's a fear or a core truth. That's even better, even though it's not true, is that people that were maybe grew up labeled as gifted or extremely talented in specific areas, and for them things came easy. And then as
Mm,
they get older, oh, wow, something isn't as easy. Therefore, I must be stupid. I'm not going to do what's hard. I'm going to stick to what's easy. I interviewed an engineer who experienced that same thing. She says, I distinctly remember as a kid, I was labeled as gifted, tried something hard, and I failed. And I said, I'm not doing that. So what if people say I'm lazy? I'd rather be seen as lazy and not stupid. So the people that go through life with a 60% effort, but are still rocking it, they're going to hit something where it's hard. That doesn't mean that they're a fake. It just means it's hard. it's just out of their sphere of talent or abilities or skills. It's not a character flaw. It's a skill limitation, which can be overcome.
I'm really glad I lost my thought because that was perfect. And my thought was that one of my mantras is I do hard things well. I've had to teach myself to say that I do hard things well. Sorry, go ahead.
And I don't remember where the source was, but something that I internalized for me is that if something is worth doing well, it is also worth doing poorly. Or if something is worth doing, it is worth doing poorly. That's what it is. So when I get worried that the thing that I'm going to do is too hard, it's sometimes is better to do something than to not try.
Oh, so you're so right.
When
Really.
I've had some depressive experiences in my life, postpartum, things like that. And I even remember like showering, brushing my teeth was hard. It was a really hard task to do.
Mhm.
And it is worth it to brush your teeth poorly than to not brush your teeth at all. Like
Yeah.
there's different things like that in your life that if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly.
Yeah.
And try it once, learn some things, even when it comes to, it doesn't have to just be personal hygiene that you're trying to convince yourself to do, but tasks at work, new challenges. You learn more from failures than you do from successes.
Well, we also have to realize too that some things simply have a learning curve.
Yeah.
Right.
Really. No, I mean, okay, Angela, we're both speakers. We didn't roll out of the womb as good speakers. We got coached. We were through Toastmasters. We entered and lost contests. We bailed out on speeches that were just not working. So yeah, learning curves. Learning curves are our friend.
Mhm.
I have a friend who was like you're saying about like always everything came easy. And it just, he thought that if it was hard, that he just wasn't supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's just not in my area of gifting. So I'm just not even going to try,
Mhm.
which when you're in business or in relationship with someone like that, it's very challenging because like even learning to be in touch with our emotions or
Mm.
be a little more open about, what's going on in our brain is
Yeah.
hard. Not even, we're not talking about tasks at work, but just being willing to say, okay, you said that thing and it hurt.
Mhm.
It I'm feeling upset. Like
Yeah.
that's hard. And if, oh wait, I'm not good at it, so I'm not supposed to do things that I'm not good at first time.
Yeah.
I'm not good at hard things. So I think that's a little more common than we'd like to.
Mhm. Yeah, it's easy to retreat into inactivity. Um, in the framework of imposter syndrome, which I like to limit pretty much exclusively to your professional world. I mean, we could talk about feeling like an imposter in relationships and parenting, and there's evidence to support all of that. I focus mostly on our work world, and I think when we, I just totally lost my train of thought. Oh my God. Oh, so I don't know. When you think that it's hard, but it's something that you need for your business, like accounting, right? I loathe accounting. I do. I loathe it. As much as I love numbers, I just hate I hate managing all that stuff. But it still is necessary, right? So what do I have to do? I have to pay somebody to do it, which for people with imposter syndrome, that is another struggle. Asking for help. Because then the thought is, if I really was smart and competent, I should be able to do it all myself. So it's like there's this tension between it's too hard and, oh, I have to do it myself. Who wants to live in that kind of tension?
Amen.
Well, and from my experience, whenever I've been in these situations, there's some part of me that is afraid. And if I really try to sit down with it and think, okay, let's paint out the worst case scenario. You do this thing and somebody does, they say you're a fraud. You don't have the experience, you don't have the education, you don't know what you're doing. Somehow or another, you are an imposter. Then what?
Mhm.
And it's always like, well, then I go learn something new,
Yeah.
or then I go to a job that I might have better experience for, or I find something like the worst
Get the
case
training.
scenario. Yeah, the worst case scenario is not like you get kicked out and put on the street and go sent to live on an island where you have to fend for yourself. Like, I don't know. It's like,
Right.
what worst case scenario is really going to happen here?
Yeah, I often word it as, the stability of the free world is not in the balance, right?
Yeah.
It's not rocket science and it's not brain surgery. Well, in my case, it was rocket science.
It was rocket science. That's why I love talking to you about imposter syndrome. But you also,
However, I had enough people around me to make sure that I didn't cause the stability of the free world to go out of balance.
Right.
love it. You also work with leaders that maybe have people on their team that are dealing with imposter syndrome. So what are some of those strategies and tips? Is it first in identifying that that's what's happening?
Yeah, I show people how to overcome it, and I work with leaders who lead people that need to overcome it. And there is a lot of overlap between those two groups, because identifying what imposter syndrome is significant. So I know if you lead, manage, train, mentor, parent, or supervise people, it's really helpful to learn about imposter syndrome. And here's the reason why. And Sammy, you even referred to it, your coping strategy, your mechanisms. They do two things. They help you manage the anxiety of being found as a fraud, but they also prevent you from being found as a fraud, because they do turn you into a rock star. So a leader who's got a team of rock stars may think, I have a team of rock stars, and not know that those rock stars are like, is today the day it's going to happen? So I've developed a set of kind of like language translation. Like, if your employee does this or says this or demonstrates this, chances are this is really what they're thinking. In other words, if you have somebody who has a lot of plates up, balls in the air, plates spinning. I always mix up my acronym, my analogies there. They're just doing it all. And you think, wow, I could just give that person one more set of responsibilities and they're totally going to rock it. You might not know that inside they're thinking, I am losing my brain. I don't think I could take on, I can't say no because I should be smart enough to do it all. And you need to know, you need to translate that language that they're telling you and back off a little bit, create a culture where you can explore that and let them feel okay with dropping a ball or saying no. So there's this whole series of things that leaders should know.
I think that's really good. As somebody who has been the plate spinner at a couple of my jobs, and that everybody's like, wow, you're so amazing. You do all these things. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you for validating. I don't add more, but also, yes, I will do it if you ask me, because I can't say no. I have been that person. Like, that really resonates with me. And that's where my experience with fake it till I make it was. I would ask myself, what does an operations manager, what would they do in this situation? Okay, I'm going to go do that thing. Even though that was my title and that's what I was doing, it was still like, okay, I'm going to do the thing that somebody in this position would do. And yeah, that sounds great. We'll keep going. But yes, I would love to have leaders who would notice or be able to just pick up on where the insecurity is within that.
Yeah,
really
it's,
hard.
because it's such a crucial organizational issue. When you read all the organizational headlines, there's burnout, brownout, quiet quitting, employee discontent, employee turnover, employee health costs. All of those issues will have some root cause in imposter syndrome, because your people are not giving their best because they're afraid of being found out as a failure, even though they look like they're giving their best and they are giving a lot and they're doing great at it, but inside they're dying quiet deaths.
Right.
How do you begin that conversation? I mean, because I can imagine it going very poorly.
Well,
Where I'm like, I'd like to visit with you because I think even though you're amazing, I think you might have some little imposter syndrome going on. Like, probably not how to do it.
no, you're absolutely right. And it is a tricky line to walk. But it does have to come down from the top. And it sometimes often just starts as, we're going to have a guest speaker. Ooh, pick me. we're going to have a guest speaker come in and talk about imposter syndrome. That's one approach. Another approach is, hey, I read this article about imposter syndrome. I wasn't aware of it. And I just want you to know I'm going to do a little bit more digging and address my own imposter syndrome to see if I have it. That's another approach. You're right. The last resort is, Angela, can you come here? Are you faking it? Hun, because I read all these symptoms and you've got them. So do you have this disease? No, we don't want to go there.
What a way to make a person who's experiencing imposter syndrome just like chink, like let me find the one little thing to blow everything up is to just point it out to them.
You're so right, Sammy, because it is an intimate topic. Most people that struggle with it do feel like they are the only ones. It's a secret shame. That's why talking about it, exposing it, addressing it, even mentioning it in a larger context does so much to diminish the power. But I'll also say, when I do my keynotes on this topic, I know we're supposed to get testimonials from people in the audience. And I often do. I get people that come up and they are gushing and glowing. Maureen, this was game changing. You were speaking my thoughts. I love what you said. But they often do it after they've pulled me off to a corner and they're talking in a quiet voice. Because they're even though they're there in the session, especially high level executives, because they don't want their people to know. I had a CEO pull me aside recently pulled me into the corner of the convention room. And he's like, you were speaking to me. So I just can't let everybody know that. And people that are at lower levels, they're like, I can't let my boss know that I feel like a fake. So it's more important to normalize the experience instead of personalizing it as, oh, it's just me. It's a flaw of my character. I can't mention it. Normalize it. And there's many reasons why people feel like imposters. And once you identify what those are, people do feel like, phew, I'm not alone. It's not just me. There's nothing wrong with me. It's just a thought process distortion. Oh, and there's a way to undistort it. I'm in.
What I heard you say right there is being able to open up vulnerably first, finding the courage and the bravery to be the first person to say, this is something I'm dealing with. Whether you're the leader or not the leader, you can still open up that space for other people. Within communication, I love to talk about the norm of reciprocity, that what you give others, you open up for them to give back to you. And so even if somebody else isn't experiencing imposter syndrome, when you open up vulnerably, you invite them to also open up in a vulnerable space.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that being the person to go first and to say, this is what I'm dealing with, can help.
And sometimes we don't even have to call it imposter syndrome. You could just simply say something like, if somebody asks you a question and you really don't know the answer, instead of trying to bloviate your way through a fake answer, you say, I'm not sure. Let me get back to you on that. Oh my gosh, that is just huge release.
Right.
So I have a question. I love taking the opposite approach because I don't get to do that. I'm usually the one defending the approach on this place.
You're welcome, by the way, for that. Be the one to put you in that defensive spot.
Yeah, I love people questioning me, so I'm going to throw it at you. So I'm imagining a maybe less attuned manager that might be like, oh my gosh, so I have to tolerate people being like less than, like we're not gonna pursue excellence anymore. Now I have to tolerate people just being like mediocre. Is that what we're saying?
That's a management style question. I'm not qualified to answer to that. However, the person, I do believe it's a manager's responsibility, a leader's responsibility to provide and I don't like to use the phrase safe space because it has a certain connotation that is, outside of this conversation. However, it fits. I think it's a leader's responsibility to provide a safe place for their people to flourish. Okay. And if feeling imposter syndrome is causing them to not flourish, then a leader does need to address it. Whether he or she labels it as I have to tolerate it, that's a separate issue. But
I'm talking about like because from my perspective, I'm not hearing, and I see the world through a very different lens. I don't see it as accepting mediocrity. You can still pursue excellence. You pursue excellence without all of this emotional baggage. So you actually, I think people there's a good possibility that they could perform better if they're not in constant state of anxiety, and they actually could perform in a way that is going to reduce burnout, is going to improve employee engagement. And so I would say, I mean, I'll jump in and defend against the nonsense that I said, but I can imagine I actually know a couple of people that I could hear them saying that, and we're not saying that
we're
we're
not,
not
you're not
asking for
saying
mediocrity.
yeah,
We're not. We're
right.
actually advocating that by encouraging imposter syndrome and by allowing it to just fester, we do lead to what you were talking about with the quiet quitting, the burnout, the brownout, all of those things. Those things lead to mediocrity.
Yeah.
Burnout and stressed out leads to mediocrity.
Yeah.
But people that are, like you said, flourishing, that's when you can bring excellence and you can bring your whole self to work, and you can participate in a way that is going to be like not constantly bombarding your nervous system with just being in constant state of stress, which then just limits your creativity, it limits your curiosity, all of those things.
And
So
it all comes down, it has a financial impact for the
it
company.
does.
Absolutely. All of those things cost the company something. And so when you could put it in financial terms, that could, should, and would get the attention of that leader to not think in terms of, do I have to tolerate this? No, you can be an agent of change for it because it's going to better everybody. Everybody wins.
Right, because if there's clear expectations and I know what it takes to succeed at my job, then I'm not always wondering if I'm a fraud or I'm wondering if I'm producing enough. If it's clear, then I don't have to be worried all the time. And that does produce some pretty significant financial implications for business.
But that's where that's the discrete moment in time where you have to choose to think, I am not going to worry.
Yep.
Because I talk to people all the time and they get to that discrete moment in time and they fall off the cliff and they say, yeah, I still don't feel like I belong here. Well, that's what we have to change. We have to change that thought right there.
Well, and I think that even if once you get past the, do I belong here? Am I an imposter? Am I a fraud? Like your work can get to a place where you can more reasonably know what are you actually confident in and what is it the areas that I actually want somebody to double check this. Like this is something I'm not as confident in. And it's that asking for help. If you're a manager or a leader and your team and your people aren't willing to ask for help, like that's a risk. Like that is actually a financial risk. And in some professions, a safety risk if people are unwilling to ask for help on the things that they may not be confident on. And being able to discern that and notice the difference between like, no, I feel very solid on these things, and these things I actually do want us to make sure that somebody else looks at this, double checks what I'm doing. It can make a big difference.
Yeah, that's you nailed it. I remember when I started at NASA, and it was a long time ago because I'm old. I was the only woman in my department, and I was assigned as a data entry, or not data entry, a data create. Well, anyway, I had to create all of the computing equations for a jet engine test facility. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but I could model it after other work that was done before me. And so modeling in my mind was copy it line for line, coding, copy it line for line, right? There were probably 2 or 3 experts in my group that had created that original program. Did I go and ask them for help? No, I was terrified. I was terrified for a lot of reasons. I was brand new. I didn't know that I could ask for help. I was the youngest person because I was fresh out of college. There was a 15-year gap between me and the other people in my office. I was the only woman, right? And these guys were truly rock stars in the industry. So I was like, there was just this perception of they were superstars and I wasn't. Those are all legitimate reasons to feel like an imposter. Really, they really are. It's just back then I didn't know that. Had I known this stuff now, had my manager even recognized that, because this wasn't even an issue back in the early 80s. It was an issue. It was not as mainstream as it is now. I think he could have done so much more to bridge that gap, to make it, to force a little bit more daily mentoring or some kind of checks and balance, or, even just ask me, Maureen, what's going on? What are you thinking? How are you doing? Daily check it. As much as I love NASA, they were not great at mentoring. It was kind of like, here, we're going to throw you in the deep end. Let us know how it goes.
That's hilarious.
And because of my character qualities, I flailed around for a long time and I eventually made it work.
I love it. All right, Maureen, this has been fantastic. What else would you like to leave our audience with? What have we not covered? Or just
my gosh, there's so much. There's so much, and I'm not going to take up the extra time, but I always like to leave people with this, 2 thoughts. Number 1, imposter syndrome is not a character flaw. It's not an illness. It is not a defect of your humanity. It simply is a thought process distortion. And number 2 is you're not alone, right? And then, I'll throw in a third one. There is a way through it. Hangeth thou in there, oh baby, you can get yourself through it.
Love it.
I think that's so great. Maureen, if people wanted to find you afterwards, hear you speak, connect with you, where can they do that?
I'm really one of the most easily accessible people on the planet, but my hub is my website. It's maureenz.com. So it's first name, last initial.com. And there you can find my blog, links to my YouTube channel, other videos, all of my keynote descriptions, and then a way to contact me, to book me or to explore if I'd be a good fit for your organization. I'm also on Facebook and a little bit on Instagram, and then LinkedIn. You can find me on all 3 of those platforms.
Very exciting. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and for having this conversation, helping us to kind of see imposter syndrome from a little bit different light than even how we talked about it earlier this year.
Well, thanks for having me. And you guys are both freaking awesome.
Yeah, we are. And just want to remind everybody right now, we are still in pre-orders for Traveling Light for Angela's book. So go to angelabelford.com to get all the information on that. But for now, we hope you guys go and be freaking awesome.